Jon W suggests, in my opinion, that's what this is. I'll never give in. Freedom of expression is not in doubt. It's a human right, my opinion's coming out. I'm not giving advice because I could be sued, but I'm making suggestions which could be used to make improvements to your life. But it's only my opinion, I don't wear any stripes. You follow what I say at your own risk. The suggestions I make will be brisk. You can do what you please, it's up to you. I'm not asking for money in this thing that I do. You might wonder why I'm doing this thing, and I wrote these words that you might sing. It's good to help the human race, to make the world a better place. Freedom of expression is a human right, so maybe I can help you with your plight. It's good to help the human race, to make the world a better place. Jon W suggests, that's my opinion. That's what this is. I'll never give in. Jon W suggests, maybe don't be a university student. I went to uni in 1989 when tuition fees were paid by the government. However, the cost of living grant was minimal and placed many students in poverty, which can affect your studies. Now university students in the UK are expected to pay their own tuition fees and living expenses for their 3 or 4 year degree. They may borrow to pay for that. That means after 3 or 4 years study at university they graduate owing a huge sum of money which 30 years ago could have bought a house. The current cost is about £50,000 of debt upon graduation. However, students still need to find a job after university, and as there are many more graduates than in the past, there is an excess supply of graduate labour, which means in many sectors employers are under no pressure to offer high salaries. We see how junior doctors' pay in real terms is much lower than years ago. Not only do most graduates have to find work, they need accommodation too, and there is a housing crisis in the UK, causing a very high cost of accommodation, which for most graduates will be rented. As they have studied for 3 or 4 years to get the job, they have become further away from a realistic possibility of buying a house after 3 or 4 years of house price growth whilst they were a student. Not only do they borrow to pay for themselves via living expenses and tuition when they are students, they lose out on the housing ladder, and I hope they would also understand by becoming a student for 3 years at university, they have lost out on 3 or 4 years of income for when they could have been working in a full-time job instead of studying. At 50 hours a week at the minimum wage, they could have earned around £76,000 over 3 years if they worked for 3 years instead of going to university. So being a student at university is a triple whammy. Borrowing to pay for yourself while studying, not working for 3 or 4 years, so not earning any money from a job, and also it becoming ever more difficult to buy a house or a flat for your home due to house prices rising over the 3 or 4 years you are a student at university. In a fair world, employers would pay you enough money to buy a house when you graduate. For most, they don't. So graduates are faced with having to pay very high rents whilst trying to save to buy a home. When you rent, you lose out even more because landlords tend to put rent up, and tenants have no security, as if they complain to the landlords find a way to make them leave. As rents rise, graduates can't save because the money goes on the extra rent, so buying a home becomes even more difficult. All the money they borrowed to attain a qualification such as a degree, to get a decent job, supposedly decent job, and all the money they lost by not working full-time instead of studying, plus house price gains, means for the first 10 years at least a university degree is pointless for most people. When one considers the financial consequences If employers want someone to have a degree to do a job, the employer should pay the candidate to obtain the qualification, for example by employing them and paying for them to study for a degree whilst learning on the job too. There are few career paths in which a UK employer pays for the studies of their desired candidate at degree level. However, it would be much fairer to people who are asked to have a degree to do a job for the employer to contribute to the degree rather than forcing them to borrow, lose out on income they could have earned by working, and losing out on house price growth while they study. Assessing potential employees at age 18, then funding their degree with a guarantee of employment for 3 years afterwards would be a great solution. That way everyone would know where they stand, and if the employer pays the student whilst they study, there is less need to borrow and more likelihood of getting on the housing ladder. That's my opinion.